Welcome to the Awaken Your Ego Podcast, where we embark on a transformative journey towards unleashing your highest potential. I'm your host, Joanne, and I'm thrilled to guide you through discussions that delve into the realms of physical, mental, and spiritual wellness.
Brenna here. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of wellness, offering insights and practical tips to enhance your overall health. From rejuvenating your body to nurturing your mind and spirit, our conversations will cover a holistic approach to well-being.
I'm one of your hosts, Ariana. Discover alternative health strategies aimed at optimizing every aspect of your life. If you're ready to embark on this journey of self-discovery and well-being, tune in, open your mind, and let's awaken your ego together. Welcome to a life-changing adventure on the Awaken Your Ego podcast.
Forgiveness.
Oh my God.
More than they sorry.
You should start and end the podcast with that clip of you singing.
If you didn't know, we're talking about forgiveness today.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today, we have a Girl Talk episode planned for you guys.
I love Girl Talk. I like our conversations.
All the girls here.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're thinking about talking about we're going to talk about how to set boundaries and forgive partners, family, and friends.
So to kind of start off this conversation, we first wanted to talk a little bit about triggers. We're going to be dialing in this conversation. So we all know what an emotional trigger is. Obviously, it's any type of topic that makes us feel uncomfortable. They're basically like signals that let us know which aspects of our lives we might feel frustrated or unsatisfied with. So I was looking up psychology today just to get you a little bit more specifics. An internal trigger comes from within a person. So it's either a memory, a physical sensation, or an emotion. So, for example, you're exercising and your heart rate starts beating really fast. You might get triggered to a time in the past where you were maybe trying to escape an emotionally or physically abusive partner, right? Mm-hmm. Trigger. External trigger comes from a person's environment. It could be a person, place, or a specific situation. So it could be a movie, a television show, news article that reminds you of a specific experience. It could be arguing with a friend or a spouse or a partner. Significant dates or holidays or anniversaries just kind of takes you back to a previous memory where you start to feel angry, upset, disappointed, frustrated, sad, whatever it is. It's bringing up some type of negative emotion. Most of the time, it brings up fear, anger, or shame. And I really wanted to make an emphasis about that. Many people either feel unsafe or threatened. They could react by panicking, trying to escape the situation, crying, acting out, or becoming defensive.
I know
Sounds
that
familiar.
one. I know that one pretty well. No, I really like actually you breaking down the difference between like an internal, external trigger. Because I think, yeah, a lot of times it's like you have things like where you feel anxious or whatever. And it takes, I've had that where I've had internal triggers where it's like, I feel anxious and then all of a sudden I'm like triggered back to a time where I'm like, wow, this feels exactly the same as it did then. However, I'm not in that same situation. Yeah. So I've felt that before, and it always like weirds me out, almost like a PTSD response or something of like, well, why do I feel really anxious? Why do I feel exactly like that time in my life when I'm not in that same scenario? It's kind of an odd feeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to look at it as like our brain is like a computer system, like constantly collecting data, constantly like assessing situations and taking note of it. And I feel like even within our bodies, like we store that reaction. Like you're saying, we have a memory maybe in childhood, and if we get anxious or upset every time that one thing happens, it's like when something similar happens in our life, your body automatically wants to respond in the way that it knows it has before. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting when you're interacting with someone or say talking to someone and they're like getting really upset and you're like, it doesn't make sense. What I'm saying shouldn't be making this person upset. Mm-hmm. Obviously something's going on in their brain. And that's the moment where you can be like, okay, that's their trigger. They're being triggered by something. It's unrelated to what I'm saying. So I don't need to take it personal or try to fix it.
Oh, for sure.
But I think sometimes we don't take it as that. We don't take it as, oh, they must be triggered right now. It's like, what did I do? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. What's going on? Mm-hmm. Instead of just acknowledging it for what it is. And like, this could have nothing to do with me today. Maybe it's about their mom, 30 years ago, or an old relationship, or whatever.
Of course, your mom.
Not trying to give moms a bad rap.
So that brings on the question is, how do you assess your own triggers? Or how do you settle them?
Well, I think
that question.
On the topic of forgiveness, right? I think a lot of forgiveness is like reconciling or accepting your past and being able to be present. So I think like with the whole process of forgiveness, I think is like being able to look back and accept the past how it was, and then be able to be present in this moment and start anew and be like, okay, I'm no longer going to let those things dictate how I, act in my present. And so I think that's how you kind of assess your triggers. And I think like cheating is like the best example of how like, people bring baggage into new relationships. It's like accessing that trigger of like when with your partner, maybe now when they don't text you back right away, it's like being able to accept, but assess, like, is this a scenario where like someone is being untruthful to me, or am I triggered by my own past? So it's like a way to kind of reconcile that kind of where you're like align your actions with how you're feeling. And I think it's like being a little more in touch with what you're actually feeling.
Yeah.
But what's your sign? Like I'm saying, how do you know like, oh, this must be a me thing or a past thing, and not like, oh, this guy's making me upset.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, like in that like scenario, for example, like I think after someone who has experienced infidelity, right, on some level, I think for me, it's almost like being able to accept, like, I'm not going to be a crazy girl. I'm not going to be like looking at people's location. I'm not going to be like asking for people to give me attention, because their actions are going to show it. Right. So it's like, for example, a text message. If I then say to my partner, like, hey, I'm feeling kind of insecure, you didn't text me back. Like, it could be my own stuff. Like, are we good? And then they can say, yeah, like, we're totally good. I'm not being a weirdo. I can accept that information. If they're going to be a weirdo, they're going to be a weirdo. Mm-hmm. They're going to go do their own thing. But it's like, I have to accept, okay, like, I'm not going to be that person. And if you're going to wrong me, I think I understand people are going to wrong you regardless, if that's their choice. But my choice is to live like intentionally, authentically, like be vulnerable. Like, okay, I'm going to share this. You can affirm that for me. And if you're someone who can't, then I guess we can't really, like, we don't mesh, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. And that could be like a
and I think for me, whenever I feel any kind of emotion, and maybe I try to err on the side of not being emotional, like I like to be very rational and like assess why I'm feeling either happy, sad, mad, like whatever it is. And in other people, I always want to assume positive intent. Like, oh, I'm a good person. I'm a nice person. So I assume everyone is wanting to treat me with respect and kindness all the time. So if I'm getting upset, yet I'm assuming this person is treating me with respect and kindness, then what is actually making me upset?
Yeah.
So I guess for me, anytime I feel, especially a negative emotion, I have to like take a minute, and that's my sign. Like, this could be a trigger. Like, go take a minute, go for a walk, journal, and try to come to terms with like what you're actually feeling right now.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people just skip over it and they want to blame the other person. Like, what you said made me mad, instead of like, but why did it make you mad? What about it made you mad?
Or they just don't like that feeling, that uncomfort. Yeah, and they just kind of like dip out. They're like, nope, I'm not dealing with it. I'm out. So, which I don't think is the proper way to handle it. I think that we should self-assess. I'm like you. I feel like one of my triggers, like how I know I'm being triggered, is my heart starts to pound and I start to get hot. Like, that's how I know. Like
a physical.
Yeah,
I'm
mine
sweating.
Is more really physical, because I'm an emotional person. I mean, I feel a lot. But when I notice that my heart rate is beating and I'm starting to get hot, I'm like, okay, this is a little bit more of an intense emotion, and it's not a positive one. And so, like you, I have to kind of take a step back and just be like, okay, what am I actually feeling? Like, what is this core emotion?
You're like, I know this intense emotion doesn't match the situation.
Exactly. I'm not working out. I'm not doing anything strenuous. So this is a me thing. And I usually do kind of have to dial back. Like, and sometimes it is like, okay, someone said something. Okay, but what did they say? What does that make me feel? What does this remind me of? I really do kind of have to step back and even kind of dive deep into like, where is this originally coming from? Because there's always like a core emotion or a core situation.
I think it's so interesting, because I feel like it's really easy to see when a child is triggered. Like, I have two kids. I have a son and a daughter. They're 2 years apart. They're basically like twins. They do everything together. And obviously as a family, we do a lot of things together. But it's interesting, like if my daughter gets upset maybe about something her friend said, or she doesn't like her outfit or whatever, a couple minutes later, she'll get real snippy with her brother or with me. And I feel like I have to stop her and be like, hey, Sawyer, are you upset about X, or are you actually upset with me and your brother? Because it feels like you're spitting hate this way, and I don't know why. We haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's just like that teaching moment of like, okay, hey, you're allowed to be upset about whatever went on at school or with your friend, but I don't need to feel upset about it. Like, you don't need to make me feel your negative emotion because you feel intense right now. And your brother really doesn't deserve it either. He's trying to be playful and fun, and you're like, stop it. Like instantly snipping at him. And so it's funny because I feel like it's easy to see it from the outside sometimes, easier than like within ourselves if we're not constantly trying to assess why we're feeling what we're feeling.
Yeah,
100%. Well, a thing I was kind of thinking about this morning too was just almost like, for me, it's almost easier for me to identify the triggers from my adult life and ways I've been wronged, right? And then be able to like understand that this is a trigger, like, okay, calm down, this isn't the same. But my triggers from childhood, like those are almost harder for me to recognize of like when I'm acting that way. And it's
like an old imprint. It's like this was downloaded so long ago. I don't even remember I downloaded it.
And it was downloaded on my old processing, right? Like generation V1. And it's just interesting because I was like the stuff that is like I'm so easily triggered with. Like if someone is coming at me really hard and I feel like I have to defend myself, I'm like, what? Like I'm like fighting, no problem. But like the stuff as adults, like where I've had to forgive people, like I can almost understand that better. I think because my processing was obviously adult like, and that childlike processing is harder to reconfigure.
Well, and me and my husband call that like our default. I'm like, sorry, this is my default. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be this girl, but it's like, this has been stored long ago and I've been living with it for a long time. So give me time to rewire that default, like trigger or feeling or how I do things.
Yeah. Cause it's like your body recognizes the emotion. Like you said, it's just imprinted in your system. So anytime that emotion comes up, your body just goes on that high alert. And so sometimes the brain just takes a little bit longer to catch up and to process like, hey, this is a different place and time. The sensations and all that, that's what we're familiar with. And that's what we need to learn how to kind of separate. Like, this isn't the same story. Yeah. This is a different time. And I need to kind of reprocess this emotion to a present day.
Well,
I like easier said than done.
I love that though, because it's like, you're being it allows you to be intentional and not reactionary. So you're not just like responding automatically. It's like, no, I don't want to respond like, say, 12-year-old Joanne. It's like, I want to respond as adult, like with my full intention and consciousness, like in that way.
Your full frontal lobe.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what are ways, I guess, that you guys settle the triggers? I know you asked that.
What do you mean?
Like, how do you self-soothe or like you said, go through that processing of like, I'm triggered, and then getting back to like a more regulated place so that you can respond or continue that conversation with someone? Like, what are ways that you guys do that? Like, how do you pause?
Well, for me, I feel like certain emotions will make me want to cry. And in the past, I was raised by a single mom who taught me that no one is supposed to see you cry. It's a sign of weakness. And so I feel like my default used to be to hold that back, but I really, I enjoy crying now. No, I feel like that's probably like one of the first things is like, if I feel like I need to cry, I'm just going to go and cry. Yeah. If it's an ugly cry, whatever. Most of the time it's just like a couple tears and then I'm like, all right, I'm good. I kind of will allow myself just to feel the feeling, cause it's just like, let me be familiar with it. Let me honor it. I always say that, like, honor your feelings, don't dismiss them. They're real. Usually for me, I like to listen to frequency music. And most of the time that will bring on a cry because I'm kind of like thinking about it. Either I'll journal or sometimes if I'm busy, I'm just speaking it. Like, I'm feeling this. This is what it is. This is, I'm just kind of talking to myself. I don't know if you guys do that. But I feel like as I kind of like have a conversation with myself, it's kind of like all my emotions are just communicating, right? We all have different rationalities. We all have different legs to stand on. So it's just kind of like that moment to let it out. And usually it will cry. or it's just like a way to just release it. Sometimes I will journal, or also after that whole process, I like to take a shower.
Cleanse.
Yes, like
release it.
Let's take a long hot shower and just let it all go down the drain, and then I come out renewed.
That's a great idea.
It's hard for me to cry. Like, I think for me, it's really, really difficult. I really don't cry often. It's easier for me to cry, I think, with my girlfriends sometimes. And like, even if like someone else is experiencing something, it can make me cry. But it's hard for me to cry for myself and feel not sad for myself, but just like let that emotion out.
So you still judge your crying?
I don't know if it's like a judge. It is like a withholding that I've developed at some point in time of like emotional control, but it is like so natural for me. Even there's times where I'm like, I know I need to cry, but I can't. I'm like sitting in my bed like this.
It reminds me of the movie The Holiday with Cameron Diaz. I don't know if I'm super old, but if you guys have seen that, where she keeps like trying so hard to cry and she just like can't.
Can't. Like, that is like totally me. And there's been times where I'm sitting in my bed like, and I'm like, I can't freaking cry. And then like, it'll happen like maybe even days later when I come to work and I talk to Ariana, and obviously you're my sister, so I feel like safe crying with you. But it's like, sometimes I'm like, girl, what is wrong with you? But sometimes even like watching like a sad movie, if I know I need to cry,
like you need a really emotional
I need that release. And I think sometimes
boost.
my emotions, because I think I like a way that I found control was being like in control of my emotions. Sometimes they're like so delayed. So like I'll experiencing something that like will make me mad, but I won't cry or whatever till like 3 days later. And then I'm like, okay, I needed that. But so like even watching like a sad movie, like that one day on Netflix, oh my, if you need to cry, girl, watch that. It's so sad.
Take note.
It's devastating. Someone told me Purple Hearts also. I haven't watched that yet, but, that's like a way actually that I think helps me sometimes, even just because I think I need that like somatic response, that like
you want something
response.
to elicit the emotion to start, and then you can completely.
And I think like
down.
exercise is a way that I've been able to like release even at the end of the day. Like I've just started working out as soon as I get home, just like 30 minutes before I like get into the whole mom mode, cooking, cleaning, doing dinner time, homework. That's a way for me to like release even like my anger of the day and just like release it. And that's why I think even going to those breathwork things have been really like impactful for me, because it's like a physical way to release that feeling, whether it is through crying or breathing or whatever. I think I hold so much tension, just like, even if it's not stuff that's intense, but just day to day. Whereas like sometimes I need like a physical release.
Oh yeah.
And so sometimes watching a sad movie helps me, but also my little bath time routine. But I think like exercise is a way that helped me kind of release the crazy. And then like, so I can like really like, okay, what are we actually upset
like look
about?
at things clearly. No, I was going to say, I really like to be physical, whether it's like going on a walk, so I can just think and be uninterrupted. And that's what I'm doing. And I can focus. Or like you're saying, lifting weights, working out always feels good just to like physically like release any tension or like negative feelings so I can think clearly. But for me, I'm a huge fan of journaling. I find it hard, but I really enjoy like taking time alone. And as a mom, it's like you always feel awkward taking your space, or maybe we shouldn't, but I do. It's like, it's hard for me to like take a minute, and I'll even tell my kids like, hey, mama's feeling overwhelmed. Like, I need to go take a minute. It's not you, it's me. Like, I'll be down in like 5-10 minutes. And even just that little 10-minute break, I feel like I can come to my conclusion or my answer and make some plans in my mind to like soothe my anxieties, whether it's overwhelmed at work or triggered by a conversation. It's like, I have to just take a second loop around and like think it through. And then I'm like, okay, cool. This is what I'm actually upset about. And it's easy. It's for me, just taking that pause without interruption really is helpful.
So how do you view vulnerability in expressing your honest feelings, even when it's uncomfortable?
I think for me, being vulnerable is being able to be like honest with what you're actually feeling. I think sometimes even with my partner, I try and like intellectualize my feelings and be like, well, I'm feeling this way because of A, B, and C. You did this. And I'm trying to be so like analytical about like, in this scenario, the way you responded, I didn't like it, right? And I can like really identify exactly what made me mad, instead of like, sometimes it's like, it's not even the scenario. Like, it's not even that. It's just like, hey, like when I asked you earlier this, it made me feel this. Like, it made me feel like I can't, like, you're not being a good partner. Or, because it really isn't about taking out the trash or, like, all that kind of finicky stuff. Obviously, like, those are important. But I think for me, it's, like,
feeling supported or
feeling supported and being, like, true to, like, what I'm actually feeling. Like, I'm not mad because you said you couldn't do this. I'm mad because this makes me, I feel this way. So it's like, I feel unsupported. And so it's like, I have to really, like, let the anger, distrust or whatever. Because sometimes, this is a funny example, like if I'm with my husband, if we're fighting and he says something that makes me feel like he doesn't have my back or he's not understanding whatever. I had this moment where I, like, went to my bedroom and I felt like 8-year-old Brenna getting, like, punished for something and being, like, sent to her room. Not that he sent me, I sent myself to my room, but it was like,
just to make it clear.
Yeah, like he was like, go to your room, Brenna. I went to my room, but I felt this anger and I was like, dude, F this guy, like, oh, I hate him, he's so rude, and it was, like, so funny because it felt like a little kid Brenna crying, like, I hate my parents, and, like, it was so funny because it was so, like, Brenna, like, you're pissed about this,
like,
which
you're
is
throwing
fine.
a tantrum.
It is fine for you to be mad about this, but, like, you don't need to dive into, like, F these people, like, because that, I think, is, like, a abandonment, whatever, of, like, you're not gonna hurt me, I'm gonna leave, and it was just, like, funny. It was like, you don't need to, this isn't this deep. Like, this trigger's not that deep. This scenario is not that. Like, you just feel upset. You feel unheard. You feel whatever. But I can't even communicate that clearly because I'm so elevated. And I'm making this more than what it actually is.
Yeah.
Well, and the way I define vulnerability, I guess, and feel free to add, but it's like being able to be completely authentic and not fearful that the other person is going to judge you or make you feel shame, even if it is something you're expressing that you're like, I know it's a me thing and I feel awkward about this, but this is how I feel. To me, that's like a type of vulnerability. And I don't mind being vulnerable with people. I feel like it's really easy for me to go deep and listen and want to feel heard. But I think when it comes to those closest to me, it almost feels harder in a weird way because I really want those that I respect and love to, respect and love me back. And like you mentioned, like emotions when you're younger, it's like I judged emotions as a weakness or as almost like, ew, you need to go be by yourself. Because I feel like I grew up in such a huge family. Like if you were struggling or felt overwhelmed or emotional, you need to go to your room and come back when you're ready to be a happy, fun girl. And so I think for me, when I feel intense emotion or kind of down, I almost want to box up and like hide it until I figure it out by myself because I'm used to figuring things out by myself from childhood. And then I feel worthy of coming back and being part of the family or whatever's going on. And I think my big challenge in my marriage is like allowing that vulnerable process and not being worried about being judged and not feeling shame myself for having emotion. Like that's a completely normal freaking thing. But I think my default programming is like, that's like you said, that's weakness. Like, why are you crying? It's such a waste of energy. You're going to have to figure this out anyways. Yeah. But there's so much power in owning your emotion and being able to like put all of your stuff on the table out there and not care if someone judges it or not. Because ultimately I still am who I am despite my lacks and my weaknesses.
100%. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. So I, especially in my home, I'm known to be very blunt. Very direct, very forward.
Straight shooter.
Yep. I will not sugarcoat anything. And I really like that about myself. And I know that sometimes it's hard for other people to receive that because they'll tell me like, oh, you're so harsh, you're being aggressive.
Or they'll take it personal.
If you break down what I said, and I always tell them, say it slowly. Slow it down, and you'll see I don't say any bad words. I'm not yelling. I'm just being very direct.
You're not being demeaning or condescending.
And I already know that if I'm direct and someone else can't handle it, they're getting triggered. Yes. And so for me, it's like, I already know that's not a me thing, that's a you thing. But I always try to make like an emphasis on focusing on the solution, not the problem. If there is an issue, I don't like to point fingers. And I always tell other people when they're coming at me, it's like, focus on what made you upset. Don't put me down. Because that's where it starts to become an argument. And I have this issue with family more than anything. But, I feel like, hey, you should be able to say what you say, but not like, you're so mean. It's like, okay, now you're putting a judgment. Like, you said this, it made me feel like this. you know? So I really do think like it matters how you say it. And I try to be very mindful of that, but also just being very direct with it. And that makes me feel like, yeah, I'm being myself. I'm saying what I want to say. I'm honoring my emotions. But I also want to say what happened. And then, okay, so how can we fix this?
How can we prevent this in the future?
Exactly. I deal with an issue of people just go in circles and circles and they keep going back to how they felt. And it's like, okay, but you already said that. Well, let's move forward. Let's focus on solving this now.
I love that. Well, and I feel like when I interact with someone and I'm like, whoa, you're getting really defensive with everything I'm saying. I don't feel validated. I don't feel like we can go back and forth. It's like, that's my sign of like, we're not meant to be friends. Like, we're not meant to interact. Like, you can't handle honesty. And I know my intent is coming from a positive, helpful place. So therefore, like, I don't think I could be that friend for you, whether it's family or otherwise. And I think that it's important to be yourself all the time and to be aware of those that want to allow you to be yourself and those that are trying to shut you down and correct you and like make you something different.
Yes.
But for me, I'm like, okay, we're not the same people.
Yeah.
I can't be that girl for you. You can't be that girl for me. Or you got to go find someone else.
Like you said an analogy, and I'm going to put you on the spot to explain it again. The difference between catch and hot potato.
Yeah. So we were talking about this podcast, discussing it, and I was obviously doing research because I had just argued with my husband that morning. And
field research.
I really need to dive in and get my own experiences going so I could speak on this. But what happened was I told him a story, and it was completely like unrelated to us personally. And it really triggered his abandonment issues. It triggered his insecurities. And it really was nothing to do with the story I told, but I could tell he was getting elevated. And then it turns into this argument. I'm like, how did this happen? Like, how did we get here? And after a long discussion, we came to find out like, okay, he was still in the midst of processing. He wasn't ready to like have that conversation with me. And I wasn't ready to not get defensive and take it personally, because I was, from what he was saying, it was triggering my character. It felt like he was questioning my character. But at the end of it all, I think with the way that I process and I pause and I excuse myself, I take a minute, assess, and then come back when I'm like more calm. It's like he bypassed that process and went straight into the trigger. And like, I felt all this intense emotion and it felt very directed toward me, even though that wasn't his intent. And as I was driving to work, I was thinking about this concept. I'm like, dude, it's like the difference between when you're playing catch, we both are a designated distance apart. We have gloves, we have a ball. We're going back and forth based on like when we're ready. And it's like fun, it's easy, versus hot potato where there's pressure. It feels intense. Like you really want to pass it back right away. And then he's passing it back my way and we're just going back and forth. And it's like, there is such a stark contrast between playing catch and having like a mature, rational discussion versus let's play hot potato and keep throwing it at each other and hope it stays with you. And I feel like that's what we were playing, was hot potato. We weren't allowing the pause. We weren't like trusting. We were just both like really dialing down on like why we were upset. And that was kind of the example that we were speaking on. And so it made me think, in what ways am I playing catch with people that I interact with? And in what ways am I playing hot potato and just like throwing it and being like, hey, take it, keep it. I hope it stays with you. And I'm not honoring like that back and forth that comes with communication and being vulnerable and coming to a solution.
Because energy is contagious. You know, and the sense is if someone is upset, it's easy to make the other person upset too, just because they're upset, just like fear, you know, and happiness as well. So I think with that example, it's like, yeah, hot potato. It's like one person is feeling, you know, anxious or upset and they're putting pressure. The other person then kind of gets pulled into it, you know?
Well, and instead of me just being like, oh, hey, this feels really intense for you. Like maybe we're not ready to talk. I should have stopped it when it felt like that. But I was so triggered as well in a different way that I was like, no, I'm going to throw this right back at you. Like, no, this is not me. Yes, totally happens.
Well, I think it's just such an easy response, because I think when we were talking about this too, it's like not wanting to sit with that discomfort. I think it's like a lot of us don't want to sit with it, which like I find myself doing too. It's like, or sometimes I'm wronged by someone. It's like, instead of just like letting this feeling of betrayal or whatever it is, mistrust, kind of sit with it and like, okay. And so a lot of times I'll be like, it's fine. Like we can move on. It's not that big a deal. It's not that serious, which like it's up to me. I need to kind of sit with those feelings a little longer sometimes and just acknowledge my own hurt. Because I think I don't do that. Like, I don't acknowledge my own hurt when it happens. I'm like, let's just keep it moving. Like, it's not that serious. And it's like, sometimes like things deserve to have space and time. And like, your hurt deserves to be recognized and acknowledged. Because if you don't, it's going to then pop up in these other weird spaces. Like, you know, like when I'm like, oh, I can't cry. And then I cry a week later over something that happened a week ago. But it's like, because I'm not allowing that to flow through.
You're trying to bypass the like assessing the trigger and just like, we're fine. Let's move on. I'm over it. It's done. But your body is like, no, girl, it's not done. I still feel these feelings. Like you're going to feel them eventually.
Yeah. So how do you move on from issues when you're the one at fault due to triggers?
When you were acting crazy?
Yep.
Well, we say, like, it's not that serious. I get over it.
I'm allowed to feel crazy. You're not allowed to feel crazy.
Like, I was completely justified. You were being rude. No, but I think it is... I have to also sit with it, too. Like, when someone says, like, they were actually hurt by something, like, my husband comes to me and was like, I really just did not like how you were talking to me. I can acknowledge that hurt for him. I think sometimes and validate it of like, well, I still disagree with you. I can't necessarily apologize for how, you know, the issue that I brought up, but I can apologize for making you feel like A, B, and C, like you weren't worthy or whatever it was, right? Like, so I think that's a way that I've been, at least I can own, like, okay, maybe my tone was a little too straightforward. Maybe it was aggressive the way I came to you. So I can acknowledge that, like, hey, I'm sorry. I did come at you pretty hot.
Yeah.
But I try and get rid of the sorry buts. It's so difficult for me when I'm like saying sorry and saying, I'm sorry, but, because I really want to justify myself. But I think when we're thinking about forgiveness, it's like the buts don't matter. Like, this person felt that way. Like, this isn't like a fight with how you felt. Like, I can't change how you actually felt. And if I made you feel that way, like, my bad. Yeah. And it takes a lot of restraint for me to release it. I'm sorry, but it's really hard.
Well, and I think taking ownership is key, right? Of being able to say sorry and be vulnerable and be like, I'm so sorry that even maybe the argument with my husband, right? Like, hey, I'm so sorry that it came to this, like how we discussed, like I lost control. I let the trigger feel real. I let the trigger like come out and I felt this intense need to defend it. But in reality, that's why I felt so intense and mad. It wasn't actually about you. It was about the action, you know, and then express a real scenario it came from. Yeah. But I think a big key to this is being aware of what your triggers are. Yes. Like if I know having like feeling misunderstood is a big issue for me. And I really desperately want those that are surrounded by me to understand where I'm coming from and assume positive intent. Because I think I was the eldest daughter of like 6 kids and everyone would always make fun of me and say how anal I was and how detail oriented I was. And you're just so like OCD. And so for me, I have this judgment of like, wait, I guess as a young girl, I was like, no, I'm trying to be helpful. Like I'm coming from a positive place, but it was always interpreted as like, you're too much, you're overbearing. You're like, stop freaking out about stuff. Like you care too much. And so for me with my partner, like I can tell him like, hey, feeling understood is like a really big deal to me. So I need you to validate and give me that feedback of like what you're hearing. I want to know you're hearing it the way I'm meaning it. So I guess it's like, if I'm not aware of it though, I can't even ask for that grace. I can't even be vulnerable and ask those around me to try to repeat back what they're hearing. So I can definitely feel understood, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Just to give you an example, an argument I had with my sister. I mean, my sister obviously knows me more than most people, but one thing that will trigger me, and because she has the power to do this to me, is when they try to tell me how I'm feeling. Like, I know I'm an emotional person. Like, I lead on that foot. Like, yes, I do feel. So naturally, if you're trying to make me upset, you might make me upset. But she kept saying like, oh, you're feeling triggered. You're feeling this. You're going to have a difficult time. Like, but for me, it's like, look, you're not listening to me. Like, I know what I feel, but you can't dictate how I feel because at the same point, you are not me.
And how can you understand me if you're telling me what I'm doing and what I should do? And
And so I have to tell her, like, dude, like, no one gets to speak for me. And that's what I say. I have no problem saying how I feel and expressing, but if you're not listening, then that's the problem. Because I can tell you, yes, I'm upset because you said this, you did this is how it makes me feel. But if you don't want to own it and you're instead like dictating like, oh, you're this, you're that, you're feeling this, like, okay, that can trigger me.
Well, it's a way of like minimizing your feelings too, of like, well, you're just angry because you're like, you know, hot-headed or whatever. But it's not really acknowledging like, no, I'm actually pissed because you did A, B, and C.
Exactly.
So it's almost like minimizing like what you're trying to bring to the table by someone trying to tell you how you feel.
Exactly. Because it's like, if you haven't lived my life, you haven't been in my shoes, you haven't gone through my experiences, you don't know how I feel.
Well, and I found that a really productive way to kind of not trigger someone else with your feelings is not focusing on, like, say, the conversation, right? Instead of saying like, well, when you said this, I got mad and it made me feel this way. Instead of doing that, saying like, hey, I felt really disrespected with your tone. Like, don't even go into the detail. But if I hear someone say, you made me feel this negative emotion, I'm like, oh man, it makes me pause and be like, that's never my intention. I never want to make you feel less. But so it's if we focus on the actual emotion that we're feeling with the trigger and not the situation or the specific scenario, usually it disarms people a little bit. And then they have an opportunity to say, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel disrespected. I can see how that happened. Let's start over. You know, it kind of slows down the emotional spiral that sometimes happens when it slows it down. Let's play catch. Like let's dial back. Let's just.
And that happens a lot for me. I think even when I'm trying to, you know, me and my husband are trying to, you know, talk about something, it's like when it feels elevated, I have to be like, this feels like a fight and I'm not trying to fight. Like I'm not trying to fight here. So we gotta cut it.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to cut it for a couple days and then we come back. And I think we've gotten better at respecting each other's space because he needs more time than I do. And that's hard for me sometimes. So I'm like, I'm ready to go anytime you want to fight, let's fight. But not even fight, but like conflict isn't scary for me. So giving him space is hard for me sometimes. And he has to really, I'm like, you have to communicate that you need space because I think you want to communicate. But if you're not ready, that is fine. You just have to communicate it to me.
Well, and I think it's realizing, too, everyone has different communication styles, right? Like, I didn't grow up in a family of yellers. Like, my parents, you know, maybe they were a lot of things, but they never were disrespectful or yelled. And so my husband comes from a family that's more loud and a little bit more domineering in some ways with how he was parented, to where it doesn't feel uncomfortable for him to get loud or to, like, express this intense emotion. And it really makes me withdraw and makes me really uncomfortable. Yeah. And that's something that we've talked about is like, okay, what do our boundaries look like when it comes to fighting fair?
Yes.
Like, okay, we're going to focus on this one topic at hand. We're not going to throw everything on the table. Like, let's do one course at a time and solve that because that's something it's attainable. Like, it's something we can actually solve and move on from. Yeah. But if I keep looking at the past and pointing fingers, it's like we're going to be stuck in the same scenario for way longer than is necessary or productive.
Yeah.
Looking to boost your energy and vitality? Try liposomal NAD from Ego Beauty and Wellness. With liposomal technology for optimal absorption, experience enhanced energy and cellular rejuvenation. Liposomal NAD, available at Ego Beauty and Wellness. Discover your vitality today. Visit www.egodefine.com to learn more and purchase.
Are you ready for a brighter future? Do you want to turn your dreams into reality? It all starts with setting SMART goals that propel you towards success. Hi, I'm Joanne, a holistic health coach with Ego Beauty and Wellness, and I've created the Ultimate Goal Setting Workbook, the key to unlocking your full potential. Picture this, you achieving your wildest aspirations. It all begins with setting clear, actionable goals. That's why I've crafted a unique guide that transforms your dreams into a roadmap for success. I help break down the journey into achievable milestones, ensuring that you stay focused and motivated. Imagine the person you'll become when you set and achieve your goals with the Ultimate Goal Setting Workbook. It's not just about reaching the destination, it's about the journey of self-discovery and growth.
Make this your year for breakthroughs. Start your journey with the Ultimate Goal Setting Workbook, where dreams meet reality. Visit our website at www.egodefine.com or call us now to kickstart your success journey. Your goals are within reach, and Ego is here to help you grab them.
I agree.
Well, and I kind of want to ask too, why should we forgive? Like, what's the point? Why should we forgive people?
Or is it even possible?
Yeah.
I think for me, because, I've had situations where friends and family have really hurt me. And I felt like, okay, because I've run into this issue before. Like, this is your family. You need to forgive them. You need to let it go. And I had a hard time with that for a long time. But when it comes to forgiving, it's kind of like, yeah, I'll forgive them. But at the same time, I'm forgiving myself. I'm forgiving myself for allowing a toxic relationship to even be there. Because I really stand for, if someone is going to be close to me, our relationship is two ways. Mm-hmm. I gain from you and you gain from me. If any relationship is one-sided where I'm just pouring my energy in and I'm being treated like shit, that's not a relationship that I want in my life. Yeah. Friend or family, it doesn't benefit me in any way. And so it's hard when it's a family member that kind of pulls you into that. And so when it comes to forgiving, it's like, okay, I love this person. I love them. They're blood. There are positive things to them. And so that is what I honor. I forgive that they hurt me and I forgive myself. But at the same time, it's like, I'm going to keep that boundary because I'm not forgetting. Mm-hmm. Because I really don't think it's possible to forget. You can still honor someone and accept them as who they are, but you leave them there. Mm-hmm. I will not go out of my way to try to change that relationship. I will not go out of my way to try to bend and be polite or whatever. It's just like, no, you're there. I'm not giving you negativity, but I'm also not giving you any of me. We can just ride this line until your side changes for me to gain something positive. If not, it's just like, you're just there.
For sure.
So it's more of like an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
The way I view forgiveness, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, it's like, it really isn't for the other person. Mm-hmm. It's for ourselves. Like, I don't want to carry this negative emotion. Yes. I don't want this situation to keep popping up into my mind. Like, it's easy, I think, for me to see that as a sign, like, oh, this is how you are. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard, and I don't, like you said, I don't need that in my life, or, hey, this doesn't feel productive. Like, I shouldn't ever bring that topic up with you again because you get so upset or we can't come to terms with it. But I think it's harder for me to forgive myself. And I think I take extreme ownership of everything that happens in my life because I try to live very authentically and like very intentional. And so when someone betrays me or there's a scenario I didn't see coming and I didn't assess their character correctly and they treated me dirty, it's like I feel this intense shame of like, Ariana, you should have saw this. Ariana, why didn't you anticipate this? Why did you trust them and let them in when they did this to you? And so I think forgiving myself for just, we're not going to be aware of everything. Like, we're not always going to see people's true colors because a lot of people have a really pretty facade that they can hold up for a decent period of time.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it crumbles and you see their authentic self and you're like, oh, like that's actually what your intent is. That's what you're trying to prove or show people. And so I think for me, it's like working through that and allowing myself to make mistakes or false judgments of people. It's like, that's the hard part, I think, for me, for forgiveness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, speaking from experience, my best friend got with my husband as we were separating, and that was the hardest thing because now she's stepmom. So I know exactly how difficult that can be to forgive someone because for me, it's like she's in my life, But I think forgiving yourself really is the hardest part. But I think it's just a matter of like, giving yourself some grace, like some things are just out of your control.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't want to carry any negative energy. Like, I don't want to hate anyone. I want to be a kind and loving person. And more than anything, it's like, what example do you want to set to your children? See, I'm getting emotional now. But I think that's just it. Is like, I think when you're a parent, it's a lot more of pressure that you feel. It's like, who do I want to be? Not just for me, but for the example that I'm setting.
100%.
And even if it's just not for your kids, it's for your spouse, your family, your friends. And I think that it really is an intentional thing, because things like that, I feel like there are certain experiences that can either make you or break you. And I think that we have that opportunity to really choose, okay, is this going to pull me into a negative space, or is this going to make me grow and elevate into the person that I really want to be?
Yeah.
And I think that sitting with that in those challenging times really will make a difference as far as which way you want to go.
Well, I think it's like underneath it, right? Like forgiveness, it's like all about love.
Yeah.
And I think it's like love for ourselves and love, like we want to exist in love. And I think we don't want to exist out of fear or resentment, or like that's not the energy I want to carry around for other people in my life. Like I don't want to show up as this like resentful, hateful person. It's like I want to show up as like a loving, kind person. And so it's like being able to see people as more than one dimensional. Like people are not good or bad. I think it's hard for me because I think after someone wrongs us, we want to put them in this bad box of like, okay, you're not a good person for me. Which like people like that can be true. Like, okay, this isn't a friend of mine anymore, which is okay. They're not a like terrible, evil person. Like life happened in this way and this is how we all acted. And that's okay. Like I can forgive you because obviously I don't know your life experience either, but I also love myself.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
I think
now
that's
I'm
where
gonna create these boundaries.
The boundaries, are so important, because not everyone vibes with the same hairdresser, right?
Exactly.
Not everyone is meant to get married and can have a long relationship. It's like, I think that kind of helps soothe even my anxieties when it came to having a disagreement, or maybe someone that I thought we were friends and it didn't work out. It's like, we're not all meant to fit. Like our job is to like be in alignment and find ourselves, and then attract those people that are on the same page.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that helps me mentally give myself grace of like, you're not everyone's cup of tea.
Yes.
And you shouldn't be. And not everyone's going to be yours. And that's like completely okay.
Yeah.
So instead of me feeling defective or like, oh, there must be something wrong with me, like why can't we understand each other? It's like, no, we just think differently.
Yeah.
And the way I like to view it is like, we're all on different paths, right? And we're all at different places on that path. But even more so, like, I have multiple paths going on, like my emotional self, like myself as a mother, myself personally. You know, there's a lot of different aspects that goes into like being a person, to where like maybe I'm really far on my career path, but maybe emotionally I'm stunted. It's like we all are at different places on those paths. And so it's like acknowledging like other people are too.
Yes.
They might be really skilled in certain areas of their life, but some aren't. So I need to have my boundaries and know like what is good for me, like what is going to help me be the best version of myself, and not just assume I should get along with everyone.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I feel like that's kind of how I feel too, in the sense of I give myself grace and compassion for where I'm at on my scales. I don't judge myself for what I don't know or what I wasn't taught. Life experiences are learning lessons, and we're all kind of moving at different paces. And so when you can learn to shift that towards other people and not blame them for what they don't know yet, you kind of like wish them well. But I feel like that kind of helps with, you know, not holding that negative emotion in yourself.
Not letting it like dictate your decisions either, of like how you're going to exist in the world.
Yeah, like I'm not going to judge myself for this, but I'm also not going to judge her or them.
Well, and I like that, because I feel like anytime like a situation comes up where maybe there's a misunderstanding or you're not coming to terms with an agreement, it's like, for me, I view that as like an opportunity to learn more about myself, to where if I know myself super well, I know who I am, I know what I'm about, I know my intention, I know my triggers, then nothing anyone else says to me should be able to affect me.
Yeah.
And if it is, then there's still work to do. Exactly. And so for me, I take it as almost like an exciting learning moment of like, okay, what do I need to see here?
Yes.
Instead of like, wow, I suck. I'm so, you know. But I think something else that I've talked to my husband quite a bit about is that concept of like things that we don't accept within ourselves. We're never going to trust that people outside of us are going to accept those things about us.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's like, if I always, like we mentioned earlier, if I always feel misunderstood, or that's like a worry of mine, then I'm going to assume people don't understand me. But if I can remember, no, I communicate very clearly. I take time to think about things. I can be understood. Like I should be able to be understood. And I can, if I assume other people are trying to do so, then that has a whole different vibe. I'm not constantly questioning like, well, do you get it? Like, what do you actually hear me? I don't feel like you do. It's like, it releases that trigger if I allow that to be known within my own mind.
The old story that you have of like, you know, people can't be, you know, they don't understand me ever. It's like no, people do understand me. Like I do communicate clearly. I have like worked on this for a long time. So it's like acknowledging the work that you put into to kind of heal that trigger for you. But you have to be able to know what that is.
Know yourself well enough.
So how do you move on from issues when it's another person being triggered in either a family or relationship dynamic and they are not ready to take accountability?
Good question.
I think we touched on it a little. I mean, I think it's definitely creating boundaries with the person, especially with family, because, right, like our families hurt us in ways that, you know, obviously run pretty deep. And a lot of it, we care deeply what people think, especially those close to us. So I think it's like creating boundaries with those loved ones in your life of like, okay, if I know that this every time, and this is a silly example, and not that I want to drag my parents, but this is a good example because I think sometimes even when I ask for like childcare, if I need help like with babysitting, because I don't ask them a lot, and then if they say no, I'm instantly like, of course they said no, they don't have my back, and I found myself getting really offended every time I asked for help and they couldn't give it. And a lot of times I had to sit there and recognize like, they're just busy, Brenna. Like they're just not available.
It's not about you.
About you. This isn't like them not having your back. I had to, and it's like, Brenna, you have a community of people that really do support you. Like that's not true. I had to like self-soothe. And it's like, even in my head, it's like, if I'm going to ask for help and if someone says no, and I'm going to take it like, I have to like, don't ask for it then. Like I had to tell, like, don't ask for help from this person if you're going to get triggered like this. Yeah. So it's like, and then if I do, then I can say like, I know like, okay, it's a no, like you're okay. I had to like
calm down little Brenna.
Calm down baby Brenna's wiring of like, that's not even true. That's not even the case. Like they're just not available. And so I think, because I like to fall into this like hyper independent mode. It's like, if someone says they can't help you with something, and maybe it is like me asking for help. It's like, and someone's not available. It's not because they don't love you and they don't have your back. It's because like they're not available. Like that's it. And so I think for me, it's like setting boundaries. Like if you are going to do this and ask this of people, you already know them as this, right? Yeah. And if you get this answer, don't be surprised by that answer. It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, and something I feel like with like me and my husband, like say we're arguing and it feels like he's getting a little negative or like kind of condescending or snapping back. It's like something that I will say, and I've learned this from Brenna, of like, hey, we want to always be respectful and kind and loving. This doesn't feel that way. So I think we need to like take a pause. And so it's almost like making those pacts with your friends or with your spouse or whoever you open up to of like, if I'm getting out of pocket, please let me know so I can calm down, because I never want you to feel my intense emotion. I don't want you to feel like it's directed toward you, because I feel like with spouses, we can do that. And it's like, why not do that with our friends and call them out and be like, hey, you feel like really intense. Like I am getting offended, like being honest and vulnerable about like how even just the conversation feels. Because sometimes when Cody's coming at me hot and like it feels kind of condescending or whatever, I'm like, hey, you're making me the villain in your story. Like you literally are making me the bad guy. I don't want to play that role in your life. So can you please like take a pause and can we talk about this? Because I'm trying to be on your team. I'm trying to understand you, but you kind of painting this picture of me in this villainous way. It makes me just not want to participate and shut down, because I thought we agreed we were going to be partners here, not the hero and the villain.
Yeah. Or a winner and a loser. I think in arguments, we want a winner and a loser. And it's like, if someone wins, like the other person loses.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and do you want your partner to actually lose? And I think Brenna's example of like childhood, and you feel like your parents are like, oh, F them. Like I'm in my room. This sucks. They suck. And it's like, I feel like as kids, sometimes we make our parents the villain and the hero. And so like when my husband's projecting on me and it feels like it's like a daddy issue coming up and I'm like, you're kind of projecting on me as if I'm treating you the way a parent did, that's not fair because I'm not them.
Yeah.
But it's like easy for me to see because I'm on the outside of like, whoa, this is like your own trigger. You're putting a lot on this. Like, stop replacing your old villain with me. Like, I don't want to be that new bad guy.
For me, I feel like there are certain situations in my life where I am made out to be the villain and I'm totally fine with it. I've accepted that I may not get apologies from these people. And I know deep down, I'm not just saying this, but I know that I'm not at fault. And I feel like I get a little bit of backlashes for keeping boundaries, even when other people or other family members don't understand. They'll always tell me like, oh, well, you should just be the mature one. You should just do this. And for me, I'm like, no.
I have to honor myself.
I honor myself. So boundaries aren't meant to hurt other people. They're actually meant for them to learn how to love you. And I feel like it's so important to respect your boundaries, even when someone else won't. Yeah. And I think that makes a huge difference because it's like, you don't have to actually respect, but I'm going to respect them and maintain them. Even if you don't get it, even if you don't understand it, that's fine. And so for me, I feel like, I can be in the same room with these people, but it's just like, I'm not giving them my energy like I would with you guys. Like, hey, how's your day? How are you doing? I it's not anything that I'm like cold and like, no, I don't give you nothing. But it's just like, we can be in a group conversation, but it's just like, I don't give you me, I'm not giving you my loving energy. Like, it's just like a basic respect that I would have for any stranger. I'm not going to treat you like crap.
Well, and it's like,
I don't go above and beyond.
It's like a fence around a house, right? Like, obviously, why do we build fences? You can view it two different ways. It's like to keep everyone out, or to protect myself within, right? It's that same thing. Like our, I guess, I'm missing the word, but our figurative boundaries, with emotions or with what we allow is similar to like that physical fence boundary. And it's like, it's just a matter of how you're actually looking at it. It can be a very positive thing, or those that you don't allow in, they view it as a very negative thing. Like, why can't I get in this boundary right now? Yeah. But I feel like at the end of the day, like we have to draw those lines and like protect ourselves. And if I know that I know myself, I'm coming from a good place, I'm being respectful, then I can trust that they'll get it eventually. It's like, if you don't see why I had to draw this boundary and why I feel so strongly, you'll see it in the future.
And it's all perspective because again, it's like someone else with a negative perspective can see me as a villain of, oh, she's not letting anyone in. But for me, it's like, no, you can come in, but there's a process and I will open that door for you, but only selective few get to come in. Yeah. Yeah. And so for me, that's when I'm like, if you want to make me out to be the bad guy, that's fine. Because either way, we have different stories, different life experiences. I don't need to go above and beyond and try to change my story in your perspective. Like, it is what it is.
That reminded me of a scenario and a story of like a thing that happened with my husband. And we were hanging out with some friends. And I was saying some very honest things. Like, it wasn't hurtful. It was just like very real stuff that I felt this person needed to hear. And it went fine. Like, I didn't feel like that person got offended. But later on, my husband was like, Ariana, like, that was a little blunt. Like, that was kind of honest. Like, aren't you ever worried, like, you're going to upset someone or they're not going to like you? And I was like, honestly, I don't care if people like me. People don't need to like me. Like, I like me. Yeah. And if someone doesn't like me because I'm being honest and I'm trying to be helpful, it means they can't be friends with me. And is that my fault? Or are they just not ready for that type of relationship right now? Yeah. I'm like, so I can't filter myself and walk on eggshells and be careful talking to other people, or else I'm not going to be able to be authentic and be real and trust my intention. Like, oh, they need to hear this, or my intuition. It's like, I want to be able to say things that I feel need to be said and not censor myself. And especially if I know I'm in control, I'm being honest, I'm being positive, my intent is to be helpful, not to put someone down. Why is that bad? Yeah. But I think some people are so worried about people pleasing and like making everyone happy that they don't say the things they really feel or mean. And I'm like, is that the kind of friend I want? I'm like, I want to be honest and I want friends that are real with me. Yeah. And if someone can't handle that and be that way, then I'm not meant to be friends with them.
Well,
like, that's
fine. It's like being able to be authentic and real. And then if someone is offended, then being like, hey, like, whoa, that was kind of harsh. it's like, then you can be like, oh, I didn't mean it harshly. I mean it this way. And it's like, there's this exchange of like, oh, that's a friendship you want, where it is like playing catch versus like, oh, like I'm throwing all these truths on you and you're kind of like, okay, like, cause that doesn't feel good. Like when someone's like kind of just coming at you with whatever suggestions that you didn't ask for. If it doesn't feel reciprocal, or if you don't feel safe enough to be like, well, I don't think that's true. And then the other person like, oh, well, no, being able to further expound. It's like, you want friendships that are able to be truthful with each other without being demeaning.
Yes. Like respect, like, a certain level of respect.
So what's the best advice or tools you can give someone who's struggling with their own pain and is constantly getting triggered?
Go watch a sad movie on Netflix. No, I'm just kidding.
Tell them, hey, you need to go see this show so you can release this.
No, I mean, I think it's like, I guess advice for someone else struggling. Because I think for me, it's like taking space and letting yourself feel the hard feelings. Like letting yourself feel them without judgment, so you can better understand them.
Well, I would say don't do it in that moment. Like, don't start giving people suggestions when they are like actually triggered right then and there and they're freaking out or like they're venting or whatever. I think it's like coming back later when they're not feeling this intense emotion, saying like, hey, like, I totally know what that feels like. I saw that you got like a little offended there. Like when I feel that way, I'll usually do this, this, and this. And I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I don't think you're seeing how you're coming off. Obviously, we should only give that advice to those that trust us and we're close to. But I think, especially in like a partnership or a relationship, it's really important to be able to kind of be like, this is what I'm seeing, and I think you're not seeing it. And maybe just, I like speaking from what I do and my personal experience, so it doesn't come off like, you should do this, you should do that. It's like, no, I actually struggle with this too, and this is how I deal with it. Like being open to share. And maybe they don't want to hear it or won't acknowledge it in that moment. But eventually I feel like they'll get it and understand.
Yeah. I think having a support system really matters. But a support system that you trust will actually give you good advice. Not someone that just, you vent to and is like your hype person and they, hype you into doing stupid stuff.
Those too. You need hype people too.
Yes, but maybe like a mentor, someone who can actually educate, whether that's going to therapy or like a consciousness coach. Someone that can give you real guidance
and tools that
or you. Someone that will just motivate you to do something about it. I think that really matters, because it sucks to feel alone, and feeling like no one gets me, no one understands. I have no one to talk to.
But how do you tell someone, oh, you need friends? Like, like, because you said advice and tools you can give to someone else, and like maybe that person they haven't created a support system for themselves.
So that's why I think that support system can be a professional. Maybe it is like maybe you don't have a friend right now, but you can go to a professional who can listen to you and who's educated and trained on handling these situations. And
but
then
how are you going to tell a friend or partner to go see a professional?
You can in a respectful way. You just say it. I mean, I think even for me, like the people that have been helpful to me when I'm trying to like navigate through hard feelings, it's like sometimes it's like people at work. I think like work friends play like a really important role in life.
For sure.
Because they're not like in your life necessarily, like especially friends that you have at work you see every day, but there are people who like see you right at work, but they don't have like a huge influence on like your personal life, your personal relationships. And so I think sometimes just talking it out with people who have no skin in the game is helpful for me to understand what I'm feeling.
Outside perspective.
I think therapy was that for me too, was just like having someone who has no skin in the game, no judgment, really doesn't affect their life one way or the other, whatever decision I make. It's like that was helpful to me, was just like having someone who's uninvolved, just give me honest feedback. And obviously if you're paying someone for honest feedback, you're going to get that.
Well, and I think it's trusting, like knowing who trusts you like that and like what kind of relationship you have. Because maybe it is your place, like with a sister or a spouse, to be like, hey, something seems off. Like, I feel like you have a lot you're going through or thinking about because your emotions aren't kind of matching the scenario. But I feel like that's a really important friend or person in your life that can bring awareness into your life. Like those are my favorite friends that are like, hey, Aaron, I don't think you're quite looking at it completely, or this is what I would suggest. These are my examples. Like, like you're saying, that support system I think is key and really helpful. But it's like when someone's trying to give you advice or help you out, instead of letting it be, instead of letting myself get triggered or be like, oh, why do you think you know more than me, or feeling shame or whatever, it's like, allow the advice, listen, take the pieces out of it that you think are helpful, and maybe honor the awareness they're bringing to you, if that makes sense. Because especially like you said with blood and family, like sometimes it's hard to see that they're treating you bad. Yeah. And maybe your spouse or your partner is like, hey, dude, like that's not cool what your sister did. Yeah. And that breeds a different awareness and makes you want to set new boundaries and look at things rationally and not just allow it because they are a parent or a sister or whatever.
Yeah. And I think that is like what's very helpful about having a spouse who's not in your family dynamics, of being able to be like, that's kind of messed up. And I'll be like, what? No, it's not. And then I'm like, wait, that was kind of messed up. Like, because I think I'm someone who's so quickly like, let's just keep it moving. It's like, sometimes I need people to be like, no, like, that's kind of off. And then for me to like really take a pause and be like, that was kind of off. Like, I really didn't like how that made me feel. So having like a outside person who kind of also, so then I can witness my own pain instead of trying to wait for them to witness it, because that's for why, right? Yeah. So it's like being able to be my own witness of like, no, like this was hurtful to you. You felt offended. It is okay. The world is not ending. But what are we going to do moving forward so we don't let people make us feel whatever.
A negative way.
Yeah, like it's like I don't have to let this person in that close if I know that they're this person, right? I think we all have friends, like some of our friends we share a lot of our deep, dark secret with. Some of them we kind of leave a little more distance because we know whether they're going to tell someone else or whatever. Like we have usually
different, like levels of trust with people.
But yeah, so it's like kind of acknowledging like, okay, well, I can still love you and be your friend, but I'm not going to let you be this type of friend. Like you're going to be this one over here, which is okay because you still have all of these really positive qualities until I've seen otherwise. And it's just like allowing that to sit a little. But I think having people in your life that you go to for advice of like, hey, am I being crazy here? Like this interaction happened and I'm just feel kind of weird about it. Like, am I the one that's off here?
Well, and being honest with yourself about those people that you leave blinders on for. Because I feel like sometimes in relationships, especially when they're new, it's like, oh, this guy's great. He's perfect. Everything he does is fine. Like, I don't want to view him in a bad light. So maybe he's doing things to me that actually are negative, gaslighting, like making me insecure. But I don't want to see that. So sometimes it takes an outside source, a friend, to wake you up and be like, no, girl, why are you allowing this behavior? But I guess for me, I have to be real about like those people I'm pedestaling or allowing to just do whatever, and I'm accepting it. And maybe those are the people, if I have an interaction and I get triggered, I need to go have a third party kind of reassess it for me. Like, hey, am I viewing this correctly? Did I miss something? So it's being honest with yourself when you are putting blinders on for those that, you know, should be seen authentically and like for who they are.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So get a second opinion, have a support system. And I think another thing is get educated. Like just reading about psychology, behaviors, what is a narcissist? You know, some of us might be oblivious, but sometimes when you read it and you think like, oh my gosh, this person fits this.
The docket,
to a T. Maybe this is something off. But, you know, it doesn't hurt. Or getting like self-help books, podcasts. Things that kind of just stimulate your mind to understand what are emotions, you know, what are human behaviors, things like that, you know, just to get your mind open to seeing a little bit more of a different perspectives.
Well, and it's owning your intent. Like if and this is a concept I've been thinking a lot about lately, actually, is like, okay, when I come home, my husband's right there. He feels off. And, you know, sometimes your energy, you're like, the energy in this room feels thick. Like, what is this? It's like being real about, I guess, where am I going with this? Lost my train of thought. Take that shit out.
I think it's like you're talking about being real with your intent, but it's
sorry. So the intent. So sometimes when I come home, if my husband feels intense, it's like, I'm a little apprehensive but I want to ask him, hey, what's wrong? And it's like checking myself. Like, do I want to ask him what's wrong so we could quickly solve this and have a good evening and like just have it be done and feel normal? Or is my intent like, wow, my spouse is hurting. He seems down. Like, I really care about him and I don't want him to feel this way. So I want to check in. And sometimes it's one or the other. Like, sometimes mom is tired and I'm like, I want to get this finished so then I can freaking relax. And other times it is like, no, he's hurting. I love him. I want to fix this. And realizing the person can feel where your intent is coming from. Like, are you correcting me because you don't want to deal with me? Or do you actually genuinely care about me?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying either one's bad. I'm like, sometimes there are those days, like, let's just take care of business and be done with it. But I want to err on the side more of like, I genuinely care for you and I want to help you work through this. It's not a selfish thing. It's not because I just want to be done with it. It's because however long it takes, I'm ready to be here for you.
Yeah.
And so when I'm feeling kind of more the negative way or the other way of like, I just want to get this solved and done, Ariana, you're not ready to be that friend for him right now. Like, you shouldn't even check in if you don't have the energy for the exchange. And if my intent isn't to help him solve his problem or help him feel better, it's like, I need to be real with myself, because I hate when I can tell his intent is just to like hurry up and fix it so then I can comfort him, or, you know, it doesn't feel real.
Well, and it's almost like a boundary you can then set for yourself of like, okay, if my intention is to be a loving, kind, and understanding partner, I'm not going to say like, hey, what's going on? Like, you seem down, if I'm not ready to be that person.
Yes.
So it's like a way for a boundary that you set for yourself, that you're able to be like, I don't have the energy capacity to be that partner that he needs right now. So I'm going to do what I need to do because I'm not ready to be there yet. So I think that is like kind of like a boundary so you can then exist as this loving, kind person.
Well, and I feel like that's something that was really easy for me to notice when I could tell his intent was to hurry up and fix me so then I can be there for him. But it was harder for me to realize, like, no, girl, you do the same thing in different ways. But it's the same cycle. And so if I want to be received as a loving person and a supportive person, it's like, I need to be real. Sometimes, Ariana, it doesn't feel loving and supporting. It feels like another box to check.
Yeah.
And that's not going to feel good to your partner. And they're going to feel like, wow, why don't you love me? Like, why is this so uncomfortable for you? They're going to feel the feelings, even if what you're saying is positive.
Well, you can't realistically hold space for that person when you don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that.
All right. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to mention or are thinking of?
I think we covered everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think
topics.
Forgiveness, I don't think it's possible to forget. I mean, and I don't think you should forget. I think it's like part of your life experience. And I think it really is like reconciling the past with and being able to be present with like your partners and show up in the present moment and seeing people for how they are then, but accepting people how they were as well. It's like about acceptance, whether it is of the people, and then also accepting yourself and loving yourself so you can forgive yourself for the ways that you might have acted that may have been toxic. So it's like acceptance and love for yourself at the end of the day.
It's like that part that you don't forget is that life lesson that helps you move forward and not do it again or not allow it to happen again. And I think like that's why you don't really want to forget. You know, you don't want to be oblivious.
But one thing that I think I would want to add too is like, say you have a disagreement with a partner or a friend, and then now, okay, hey, we solved that. We calmed it down, and moving forward, we know what we're going to do to not be in that same scenario again. It's like allowing the newness. Like, quit looking back at, well, you did this, and I feel like it's hard in relationships to do that sometimes. We want proof. We want details to justify why we think what we think or why we feel what we feel. But it's like, no, if we're going to truly draw a line in the sand and move forward and we're going to have a new dynamic, allow that person to show you new concrete details so that you can move forward with that trust and build that instead of always looking backward. Yeah. So I think that's an important aspect of forgiveness. We didn't touch on very much, but I think for me, I have to kind of self-assess and evaluate and be like, wait a minute, am I judging them for how they treated me then? Or am I actually honoring our agreement to do it differently moving forward and looking at them with new eyes and new awareness and allowing all these new actions to determine what I think?
Yeah, because it is possible for people to change for the better. But I think that consistency, that time has to pass where they have shown that consistent behavior. Then it's okay to like, okay, I'm going to forget about that because obviously the behavior is new and it's real versus like these little like a couple of months, or maybe you change for a couple of weeks and then you're back in that old cycle. You know what I mean? Then it's really hard to forget. So it's like that time and consistency matters.
Yeah. Well, and even I just actually thought about this time in high school where I started dating my best friend's ex-boyfriend, shady.
Messed up.
But I mean, I was a freshman in high school. I was young, but it was the first time that I had like really felt like it, and it was like one of our really good friends. It wasn't like just an acquaintance. And for whatever reason, I justified it at the time. And looking back now, one, like I was so sad, like everyone hated me for a good amount of time. And I'm really, really grateful for that experience because it like one taught me who my friends actually were. Two, like, I don't like how this feels. Like, I don't like being this girl. And all for a guy who then I ended up breaking up with and was drama and was terrible and it wasn't worth it. But it's like now, like that feeling of like people not liking me, one, had me really had to understand like how to love myself. And two, like, I don't want to be this girl. Like, I don't like betraying my friends in this way. Like, it really just was not a good feeling. And eventually she forgave me. But it was like, I'm so glad I had that lesson at that age because it was like, this doesn't feel good to me. This doesn't feel like the person I actually want to be. And I know I'm not that girl. I would never do that again. But I'm so grateful for that experience because it taught me, like, I don't want to be this person. And so it was almost a way, you know, now it's like, I know I don't feel, I mean, I guess like shame over that experience anymore because it was like I was young and it was, you know.
And you learned from it.
And I learned so much from it. Would I do it again? Heck no. Like, there's no way, right? So it's like, even that little example, it's like, I'm so grateful for that experience because it taught me so much. I don't need to do it again. Learn the lesson. I'm good. One time, like not that serious, but, you know, I don't identify with that person. I mean, I was a child. So,
Well, and I think that's that piece of like forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, nothing is a failure or a misstep if I learn from it and I move on with a newness or a new determination. And so it's like allowing everything to be just a learning moment, like a moment to learn more about yourself, a moment to establish better boundaries, like whatever that is, and be like, wow, this is actually a positive thing. Instead of like, oh, this sucks. Now I have to think about it and I have to take time. And it's like, instead of having it be a burden, I'm trying to lean into like, no, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, and if you've forgiven yourself, if you've done what you need to forgive repair the relationship with the people that you love and care about, no one can make you feel shame for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like no one can like sit there and say whatever about me because I've already like done the work to then get past that. So I think it's like also loving yourself in that way so you don't let it dictate your present moment.
Yes. 100%.
But,
well, thank you guys for joining us on this Girl Talk episode.
Yeah, I hope you like it.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode of the Awaken Your Ego podcast. We hope our discussions have inspired you to explore new dimensions of health and wellness.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback fuels our mission to empower individuals on their path to optimal well-being.
Stay tuned for more insightful conversations, and until next time, may you continue to awaken your ego and embrace the extraordinary potential within.
Take care, be well, and remember, your journey matters.